And at the same time, there's some sort of black swan going on with Tether that Brad Garlinghouse may have predicted, because yesterday, Uphold decided to delist Tether. On the back end of this year, they're about to launch a stablecoin, Ripple, and guess who's partnered with Uphold? Ripple. So Tether's being pulled off, Circle's staying on. The case for Ripple might be ending September, and they're launching their own stablecoin, and they're partnered with Circle. So this is just my opinion, what I think is going to happen. I believe BlackRock, Ripple, Circle are going to be some of the largest, and Coinbase are going to be some of the largest crypto companies in the world in financial.
What if I told you the next gigantic green candle on the XRP chart isn't some moonboy fantasy, but the logical result of a real-world adoption wave that's already gathering speed? In Q1 2025, XRP ETPs in Europe pulled in $37.7 million of new capital, almost matching Ethereum's fund flows, yet the price still hovers near $2.20. With spot ETF filings awaiting SEC approval and hints of a U.S. Treasury digital asset reserve, what will finally break the logjam? Which of these unfolding events will ignite XRP's next surge? Let's dive right in.
Okay, this is a great question here. Why do you think the price will change when Jed McCaleb runs out of XRP? So quick backstory, Jed McCaleb is one of 3 developers that created the XRP ledger back in 2012. He was sitting on billions of XRP, and he's been dumping millions of XRP daily on the open market. So this has obviously kept prices suppressed, and it's just one of the many ways that they've kept XRP price suppressed. We expect XRP to pump, anywhere from $7 to $33 initially after the SEC lawsuit wraps up, but we're going to go somewhere, a set price for the utility of XRP, the liquidity needed to provide these networks, the liquidity. We're talking, guys, double digits is just getting the party started. In my opinion, we have to go to 3 digits plus. I think that 4 and 5 digits down the road, but let's not get crazy. Let's just, for the simple folks who need to understand, 2 to 3 digits, very likely.
In recent months, several protocol enhancements have been introduced to address long-standing settlement and cost challenges. These updates achieve finality in under 4 seconds, reduce transaction costs to fractions of a penny, and improve interoperability between legacy banking systems and emerging central bank digital currencies. Together, these improvements create a user experience that increasingly outperforms both Swift messaging and competing blockchains. In practical terms, payments flow so seamlessly that businesses and banks may not notice XRP operating in the background until they review their ledgers and recognize the millions saved in fees. Partnership activity has also accelerated. In the first quarter alone, Ripple secured multi-year agreements with regional payment providers across Asia and Latin America. These contracts include volume commitments and on-premise validator deployments, integration of XRP-based liquidity rails, and compliance training for staff. While such implementations lack the immediate spectacle of viral headlines, they establish a durable network effect that extends well beyond hype-driven price surges. When these partnerships reach full deployment, on-chain transaction volume is likely to show a significant and measurable step change.
XRP fans, Novati partnership with Ripple goes from strength to strength. It expands into the Thailand market. They just opened up an on-demand liquidity corridor, and that was through Siam Bank. Now, this is on the heels of the Philippines corridor that they opened up. So Novati and Ripple are partnering to do big things. And then if you remember, I told you about the identity patent in Australia. Well, it was Novati that opened up the very first agreement with identity. So big things happening for XRP, and they're making their ripple across the globe. Like, subscribe, follow. I'll be back tomorrow.
Regulatory developments are moving in a similarly constructive direction. The UK Financial Conduct Authority's recent draft guidance explicitly cites XRP's cross-border payment utility, and Singapore's Monetary Authority has incorporated XRP into its digital asset reserve pilot programs. The Dubai Financial Services Authority is reportedly considering a new license category for high-liquidity payment tokens, criteria that XRP already satisfies. Such clarity does not guarantee an immediate price spike, but it does eliminate the existential uncertainty that typically shadows digital assets. The developer community is another important indicator of network health. Independent teams around the world are creating bridges, wallets, and analytics tools for XRP. and hackathons in Europe and North America have generated proof-of-concept applications in micropayments, tokenized assets, and decentralized finance using wrapped XRP. Developer investment in time and resources reflects confidence in the network's long-term viability, and that confidence typically attracts additional users and projects.
Did you know that a simple shift in oversight could change the future of cryptocurrency, especially for XRP? The SEC's action has slowed down XRP's adoption, hindered its price growth, and on the other hand, you have the CFTC, or the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission. They've offered a lighter touch regulatory framework, and under Trump's administration, it's considering transferring oversight over to them instead of the SEC. This shift would mean fewer restrictions, greater clarity for investors. If Trump were to push for this transfer of oversight, it could unleash a wave of positive momentum for XRP and other digital assets.
On the retail front, sentiment indicators on platforms like Telegram and Discord have begun trending from neutral to positive for the first time in years. Such shifts in crowd psychology often precede rapid price movements, as short covering and retail enthusiasm converge in a velocity-driven rebound. Given XRP's comparatively lower daily trading volume, even a modest influx of buying pressure can translate into significant price appreciation. Meme culture, sometimes dismissed as superficial, can also signal building momentum. When a concept like the adoption candle gains traction on social channels such as Reddit or TikTok, it creates a self-amplifying cycle. Price appreciation attracts influencers. Influencers drive broader awareness, and new participants push prices higher. These feedback loops raise market interest until institutional resistance thresholds trigger profit-taking, setting the stage for the next cycle of accumulation.
So, Ripple believes in utility. So there are a lot of crypto players out there who frankly won't last long. And
it scares a lot of people in logistics, I think, if they start to dabble in that.
Absolutely, it scares a lot of us. So what Ripple has always done is taken that baseline technology, and we've said from the very start, from the outset, that every technology needs a use case. And for us, the very clear use case is payments, because the XRP ledger, which is an open source public blockchain, was purpose-built for payments, for speed of transaction. So we absolutely see it. Over 500 organizations are working with us today, and many of them are using XRP at the heart as a bridge currency. So that is already happening, and we see.
Critically, on-chain utility metrics for XRP continue to rise even during price retracements. Banks and enterprises focus on settlement costs and speed, not market fluctuations, so real-world transaction volume serves as a stable foundation. When fundamental usage climbs under the surface, subsequent speculative surges are typically stronger and more sustained. Analyst forecasts have begun to reflect this multi-layered momentum. Projections for XRP's price by year-end range as high as $24, based on modeled supply shocks and projected flow ratios. Even conservative adjustments to these forecasts imply potential returns far exceeding typical market expectations. This outlook assumes varying scenarios, SEC lawsuit developments, ETF approvals, and potential government reserve allocations, each of which could independently trigger substantial price reactions.
It's possible that some of the largest XRP holders are legally not allowed to sell their XRP. Check out these documents that were found. Ripple Labs, this document says Ripple Labs has established legally binding agreements with insiders and owners of large amounts of XRP that protect against a large-scale sell-off of the asset. What? Huh? Like, people have this weird conspiracy that they're gonna lock you out of your XRP or, make it so that you can't sell it or whatever. No, dude, it's a decentralized cryptocurrency. As long as there's a DEX or a centralized exchange that is selling XRP, you can sell your XRP. But this is weird. Ripple Labs has contracts with insiders binding them not to sell large amounts of XRP. That's crazy.
In summary, the narrative of XRP being buried ignores the coordinated progress across technology upgrades, strategic partnerships, regulatory acceptance, developer activity, and real-world usage. These factors coalesce into a compelling thesis. XRP is positioned for its next significant breakout. When the convergence of catalysts finally occurs, The resulting market move is likely to resemble a powerful, data-driven shift rather than a random spike. The evidence suggests that, rather than remaining buried, XRP is on the verge of rising. Let's dig a little deeper into why the burying XRP narrative is not just wrong, but setting us up for one of the most explosive comebacks in crypto history. First, consider the technology upgrades quietly rolling out behind the scenes. Ripple's latest protocol enhancements aren't sexy headlines, but they solve real friction points. Settlement finality in under 4 seconds, reduced transaction costs down to fractions of a penny, and enhanced interoperability between legacy banking rails and emerging CBDCs. These incremental improvements create a user experience that edges out both Swift messages and rival blockchains. In plain English, the plumbing is getting so smooth that businesses and banks won't notice XRP moving through their systems until they look at the ledger and wonder why they're saving millions on fees. Next, let's talk partnerships, which is the lifeblood of real adoption. In Q1 alone, Ripple inked deals with 3 new regional payment providers in Asia and Latin America. These aren't token strategic partnerships that expire in 6 months. They're multi-year contracts with volume commitments. Behind every press release, there's a team installing on-premise validators, integrating XRP liquidity rails, and training compliance staff. That work isn't glamorous, but it's the slow burn that builds a network effect far more durable than hype-driven rallies. When those contracts go live, you'll see a step function in on-chain volume, and that's a statistic no speculator can ignore. Meanwhile, regulators around the globe are taking notice. The UK's Financial Conduct Authority recently put out draft guidelines explicitly acknowledging XRP's use case in cross-border payments. Singapore's MAS is running pilot programs with digital asset reserves that mention XRP by name. Even the Dubai Financial Services Authority is mulling a special license class for payment tokens that meet certain liquidity and compliance thresholds, criteria that XRP already exceeds. Regulatory clarity might not fuel a pump in the next hour, but it removes the existential threat that always hangs over crypto. It's the difference between walking into a boardroom with a red flag and walking in with a green light.
This is Evan Schwartz, the co-creator of Interledger, talking about how when they were approaching banks were looking for Ripple to scale up to millions of transactions before they actually started using XRP's technology. I'll play this short clip and go back to Brad and Johnny.
So banks are very interested in adopting this. Basically, Ripple's been working with banks for 2 years now, and part of where the idea for this came out of was banks were very interested in Ripple's technology, but said, if we're interested in this, we want to see how this scales. It's like, can we push millions of transactions?
It's no surprise at all that regardless of what the SEC is doing, banks and institutions acknowledge that this technology is a massive upgrade to what they're using today.
Are banks still knocking on Ripple's door? Are they still testing their technology? Are they still looking to adopt it? And I think that's why you're seeing
Let's not forget the dev ecosystem. Outside of Ripple's core team, there are dozens of independent studios building bridges, wallets, and analytics tools for XRP. Hackathons in Europe and North America are churning out proof of concepts for micropayments, tokenized assets, and DeFi rails powered by wrapped XRP. When developers invest time and capital, they're making a statement. They believe the network will still be here next year. That belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because smart devs chase networks with growth potential, and that growth draws in more users. On the retail side, social sentiment is quietly shifting. Sure, Twitter trolls still debate the lawsuit, but on platforms like Telegram and Discord, sentiment trackers are hitting neutral to positive for the first time in 2 years. When crowd psychology flips from despair to cautious optimism, you often get the classic velocity trade, a rapid bounce triggered by short covering and retail FOMO. And because XRP's daily trading volume is thinner than Bitcoin's, that velocity trade can send prices soaring in a matter of hours.
I was talking with some of the DevRel guys at Ripple just the other day about what we believe we'll be seeing within the XRP ecosystem in 2025, and my big thing is interoperability. We need to see more interoperability for XRP assets within the entire XRP ecosystem, and then I think we're really headed towards a similar thing to looking at like Ethereum and all of the L2s, which every single L2 is bringing value back to ETH, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same way that all of these XRP integrated ecosystems, which all have unique use cases, root network, EVM sidechains, Zahao, all of these, as they grow and gain adoption, come back to benefiting XRP.
Speaking of crowds, let's circle back to that meme of the XRP rocket. Memes get a bad rap, but they're the canary in the coal mine for viral attention. The moment an adoption candle catches fire on Reddit or TikTok, you'll see a feedback loop. Price moves up, influencers notice, video views spike, retail dips in, more price moves. That loop feeds on itself until it hits institutional resistance levels, like whales taking profit or funds rebalancing. But each loop raises the floor for the next one. Over time, what started as a silly cartoon becomes the psychological foundation for a sustainable uptrend. Now, nobody expects a straight line to the moon. Profit-taking, news shocks, even macro sell-offs will introduce volatility. That's normal, even healthy. But consider this. During most corrections, XRP's utility volume has actually increased. Banks don't care about headlines. They care about settlement speed and cost. And businesses keep using XRP to move value across borders. That means the real economy, outside the pump and dump cycles, continues chugging along underneath. When the next catalyst strikes, that real-world demand will cushion the blow and amplify the rebound.
It is about time we see some memes on the XRPL. Yes, you heard me correct. Apparently, you can trade XRP meme coins on XRPL. And no, I'm not partnered with this platform in any way, shape, or form. However, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I just think it's fitting considering everything that the XRP community has been in since the SEC decided to go after Ripple. You got reamed during the bull market, delisted off exchanges, shunned by the entire crypto industry, and your co-founder of Ripple donated 10 million XRP to an anti-crypto candidate. And if we're going to be decentralized, let's be decentralized and let's have fun with memes. Anyways, the platform is called First Ledger. You need a Telegram account to get started, and you can trade all different types of memes on XRP. Also, they are having a airdrop if you refer people, and no, I don't have a link to refer to you. But here's the details if you're interested. Have fun, be safe, moonbag and vibe.
Risk management remains essential throughout this process. Even as on-chain metrics and institutional flows point toward a breakout, volatility spikes can occur unexpectedly, whether due to macroeconomic shifts, legal developments, or sudden profit-taking. A balanced approach involves scaling into positions gradually, diversifying across other high-conviction assets, and setting clear exit points for both gains and losses. Monitoring key indicators, such as ETF approval timelines, reserve policy announcements, and quarterly inflow reports, can help align exposure with evolving catalysts. By combining disciplined risk controls with an awareness of the broader adoption thesis, investors can participate in XRP's potential upside while guarding against unforeseen market reversals. At this point, you might be wondering, okay, it all sounds great, but when? That's the million-dollar question. If the SEC drops the case before the ETF decision deadline, you could see a triple-digit percentage move in weeks. If the lawsuit drags into 2026, it might look more like a slow burn into Q3. And if geopolitics throw a curveball, say another country announces its own digital asset reserve, you could have a sudden spike of sovereign FOMO. No one has a crystal ball, but if you've been watching the data points, ETFs, reserves talk, institutional inflows, protocol upgrades, partnerships, dev activity, and social sentiment, you can piece together the mosaic.
Now, if the SEC approves Grayscale's XRP ETF, here's what could happen. Grayscale becomes the gateway for XRP investing. With an ETF now approved, anyone with a brokerage account like Robinhood, Fidelity, E-Trade could easily invest in XRP without touching crypto exchanges. That means a huge wave of investors will pile in. And this is because they already know how to use those exchanges. The SEC is basically acknowledging XRP as a legitimate asset for mainstream investing. That kind of credibility boost can make even more investors confident in buying XRP, further driving up the price.
So where does that leave us? XRP right now feels like a coiled spring sitting under a thin sheet of disbelief. Bears point to the lawsuit overhang, which could weigh price below fundamentals. Bulls highlight utility milestones and fresh inflows. But the crowd hasn't fully bought in. Perfect conditions for parabolic moves. Because skepticism fuels late-stage FOMO. I can't promise timelines. Nobody can. But this setup is one of the most asymmetric I've seen since early DeFi summer. If you dip a toe, remember the basics. Never go all in, keep dry powder for nasty dips, and zoom out when headlines turn into roller coaster emojis. If you've made it this far, congrats. Less than half of viewers stick around for the full story. Now ask yourself, will you watch XRP's next adoption candle light up the chart from the sidelines? Or will you be one of the few who saw it coming? If you want more deep dives on these setups, hit subscribe and let me know which coin you want me to unpack next.